Everything begins with yet another cliché story of a web novel, and one day, when he opened his eyes, he was already in a medieval fantasy world, one of those with warriors, bows, and arrows. However, he didn't know how he had ended up there. Now, he needed to fight battles and struggle for his survival. This turned him into a mercenary who, countless times, cut down enemies, all of it merely to survive. After so many battles fought, and so many enemies defeated, he always had to stay focused. However, amidst it all, there was always a glimmer of hope, embodied in someone with red hair who warned of dangers. When the trumpets blared, the sound urged all forces to advance. Yet, all he wanted was to survive. Perhaps that was why he was sitting on a rock, surrounded by bodies. He heard someone remark that he had survived once again. Those gentle hands always checking if he was okay. Gently, she would say it was just to ensure that his handsome face was still intact. In a place where strength was measured by the sword and where it always rained, the answer was that everything was fine. She wished Eren knew how much she liked the rain. That's why she wanted to go east, because it rained a lot there, and it wasn't easy to forget her, nor could he, because it was raining. Everything was interrupted by the sound of a whistle, ordering them to run, for they needed to capture him. And everyone called for the captain, asking where the others were, but they would arrive shortly. By the way, who would have thought that gentle Hans would cause such a big incident? There were those who disliked him, all because he was a mage. They believed mages weren't trustworthy people, and that they must have certainly made pacts with the devil. However, that's not how the captain thought. He believed everyone was speaking too much about something they didn't understand. It might just be envy, as Hans had earned the nickname, Pretty Boy, which had previously belonged to someone else. As he walked away, someone asked the captain where he was going, but he simply headed to the barracks. However, Hans' nickname would change from that moment onward. People joked that Hans would still be handsome even if only his head remained. The captain thought that he would probably be executed if captured. At the headquarters of the outer fortress of Caserdic, the captain knocked on the door. The commander of the outer fortress, Manhwa, thought it was already a bit late and mentioned this to Captain Eren. The captain explained that he had been slightly delayed because he had fallen asleep. The commander had heard that he was quite close to that criminal, Hans, and wanted to know if it was true. He reflected, as it was true to some extent, since Hans was an extraordinary boy, incredible in his youth. He still remembered when Hans said he had entered the magic academy, but he would stay distant. However, to the commander, he stated that they barely exchanged greetings, as saying anything would only worsen the situation. The commander found that very convenient. That incident wasn't a simple crime. It was related to the Lord's daughter. That boy had stolen something he shouldn't have. In such a critical situation, if the guards captured that criminal, they could please the Lord. The commander wanted to make it clear. He wanted his head, alive or dead. Captain Eren said he would do his best, as that incident involved the Lord himself. Leaving the commander's room, the captain found it all irritating. And now, because of Hans, he was also almost in danger, with his own head at stake. He heard someone call him. It was the 4th unit of guards from the fortress, and they were ready. No matter how crazy mages were, that Hans couldn't be hiding in that filthy place. That place was unpleasant, so one of them suggested pretending to search while grabbing a drink. However, the captain didn't like that conversation one bit. They were just foolish medieval men. They wanted to drink, even with their heads on the line. Passing by someone hooded, sitting under the rain, the captain approached and drew the attention of the one sitting in the rain, ordering him to remove his cloak. Giving this command, he already secured his sword, as if ready. The person about to remove the cloak smiled, saying it had been a while, and called him by name. Before the man could say anything more, he received a punch to the face. The distance seemed to have reminded the captain of that person's face, making him angry. He asked if he had been caught, as he knew he had caused trouble. The man tried to defend himself, saying he was just the herbalist in that alley. He claimed he was about to report a theft, but to the captain, that face seemed familiar. Hurt, the two talked, and the man explained that all the herbs had been stolen, and he had even been beaten by the guards. I wanted to know what was so urgent for that thief to steal such a common shadow root. Eren thought that, if they were shadow root leaves, they could be used for stopping bleeding. He needed to know the thief's direction, but he was in the middle of the rain and a bit far from there. A hooded young man stood under the same rain, with an injured arm. The captain asked him what kind of appearance that was, saying he was always the one to keep things clean. He said this while looking at the arm, where the wound was, with the sword on his shoulder. He said he had just done that, but the boy should go with him while he was still being gentle. The boy peacefully thought he couldn't go, and looking at the captain, he uttered some strange words. And after that, it seemed like the rain was falling upward. The boy stood up and did all of that. Eren knew magic was a filthy and great loser because of the rain. Even so, the hooded boy apologized, saying he still couldn't be caught. In that small whirl of rain, he departed with it, shouting that it wasn't over yet. He spoke other words that weren't understood. It was annoying. Water magic on a rainy day. Looking up and seeing the magic happening, he thought that, if that was the case, he simply took a breath. Doing so, he decided he would defeat the mage and tried to surprise him. The mage cast another spell, and strange words were spoken. It seemed that Captain Aaron sensed something. Filled with rage, he asked Hans to be quiet. He knew there was power embedded in a mage's words. Not believing he could have done that, he threw the sword to strike Hans. He felt the cut and after that realized the drops of rain, which he loved so much, were falling. He recounted hearing rumors that he had made a pact with the demon. Captain Aaron wanted to know if that was true and if there was a scar near his heart. After grabbing him by the shirt, he was checking for the sign of the pact, but he was clean. He wanted to know why he had done something like that, even without being a demon's slave. In tears, Hans said it would be hard for Aaron to understand, even if he said something, but one day he would find out. Aaron, placing his hand on his face and lowering his head, thought he was going crazy. Even so, he hadn't let go of Hans' shirt. He opened a vial with a potion and poured it over the wound he himself had inflicted on the mage. He said it was a regeneration potion and told him not to be stupid and just to manage. Losing an arm would be punishment enough for a theft. Unfortunately, there was nothing else he could do. His coffee, because in that damned medieval era, you were either innocent or hanged. After removing some planks, revealing a small exit, he told Hans to go away. The two, who were friends, almost like brothers, were satisfied and moved. But Captain Aaron went further. He punched Hans in the face and ordered him to stop calling him brother. Hans, after falling to the ground, trembling and with his arm badly injured, still thanked him and insisted on calling him. Slamming his fist on the table in a tavern where they were gathered, he complained about Hans having disappeared. They couldn't believe they hadn't found him, even after searching the entire fortress. Brig thought that, as Hans was a mage, it was possible he had used magic to escape, but it seemed Poole didn't share the same thought, as he didn't believe everything was possible with magic. Carter just needed some silence. He needed everyone to be quiet. He hadn't been able to sleep even 5 hours in the last 3 days. He was so tired he felt like he was going to die. Opinions diverged. Some thought he couldn't die just because of that, but Poole thought he could. But it seemed it was just an exaggeration, even when he said he had vomited due to lack of sleep. Anyway, Verman was informing them that the search had ended for now, so they could rest. And while they argued in that place about trivial things, elsewhere, the captain of the 4th unit, Aaron, was before his superior. While talking to him, he lit a tobacco, saying it was a pleasure to meet him and introducing himself as William. The captain knew that man was the commissioner, someone who could cut off his head with just one word, and he asked if the captain was really close to Hans, the criminal. There was also the fact that he had continued patrolling the last district, staying there alone. He interrogated him about not having found anything in the district, or if it was just a coincidence. It was precisely the area the internal guards couldn't look into, and the commissioner thought he had let Hans go. The captain said there was nothing in that place, and upon saying that, he wanted to know if the commissioner had any evidence. As they stared at each other like that, the atmosphere grew tense, and when Commissioner William returned the floor to the commander of the guard, he nearly had a fit. However, the commissioner only wanted to praise the tobacco he had received, saying it was of excellent quality. After that, he questioned how someone could acquire something so valuable on such a low salary. He asked if he had stolen or diverted it. He replied, of course, that he had not done such a thing. He requested that everyone in the castle listen carefully. Those who committed crimes, or those who helped a criminal, one would die by his hand, and he looked directly at the captain. Warning him to keep those words in mind, he extinguished the cigar on his clothing. The captain, after brushing off his clothes, smiled and said he would keep all those words in mind. After that, he was on his way back to the castle. As he walked, he was tired of listening to that old man. He thought Hans must have managed to escape without being caught. As he walked calmly, he heard a scream coming from an inn, and that scream caught his attention. Inside the establishment, a customer and the innkeeper were questioning what someone was doing. She asked him to let go of her hand. She was the owner of the inn, named Hannah, a smiling woman. One of the customers sitting at a table appeared annoyed by what was happening to the lady. Dylan said the lady was misunderstanding, that they had only been outside the village for a long time. Winking at her, he said they were just trying to make some local friends. With the knight's words and attitudes, the lady felt intimidated. After the knight released her arm, she remarked that he seemed like a mercenary from another country. She also said that before they regretted it, it would be better for them to stop there. However, the redhead thought the lady hadn't understood correctly. Slamming the table, he asked what she would do to stop him. Getting very close to her and looking into her eyes, he asked what she would do to stop him. Then he asked if she thought some kind of guard would come to help her. Being evasive, he said it was impossible for anyone to care for a neglected and isolated inn. However, when the captain entered through the door and she saw him, she was extremely pleased. The others were astonished because Eren had arrived. The lady ran to hide behind the captain, leaving the knights there. They were quite annoyed, though they said nothing. Their expressions clearly showed their displeasure. They all stood up and began walking toward him as if they wanted to fight. Eren, looking at her, said, 10 days. She retorted, saying, 5 days, because this time it's less than the last. She argued that since he was a guard, that was his job to begin with. Then she said it would be 9 days, as the guard captain had already finished his shift for the day. While the knights stood dumbfounded watching the two, she argued that 6 days was the most she could offer. The redhead, irritated, who previously had more intentions with the maiden, didn't like being ignored. He thought that useless man should pay for not paying attention to them, so Eren settled on 8 days. Placing his hand on the knight's face, he asked if he always had the bad habit of speaking in vulgar words. Then he turned back to Henna, saying he wanted free lodging for 6 days with dinner included. She agreed. He still had his hand on the man's head. Henna was happy because she had secured 6 days of peace. He said that from then on, it was time to educate those with horrible habits. Seeing him press down on the head of the man who had confronted him, realized what he was doing. The others sat back at their tables and continued drinking and smiling as if nothing had happened. However, there were always some who needed to be taught, as they couldn't remain calm. Not that they were bad, but they needed a greater incentive to behave. Eren gently told them that as soon as each one took a blow, they would be more courteous. Thus, he continued his work of educating those knights to behave better. Some old companions who already knew his reputation were eager for his arrival, because with him there, the inn would have more entertainment, and they asked Henna to bring another glass. He was the reason they became regulars at the Smiling Rabbit Inn. It was good to know there was an educator living there, the greatest human cleaner in Kasurdik, the guard captain. Everyone followed that guard captain, as they found his teachings very useful. Looking at those gentlemen cheering at their tables, he thought he might give them a lesson someday. However, he noticed the red-haired boy had a hidden axe and a strange intent. With his disciplinary gaze, he asked him if he really intended to use it. The boy, who had already been educated, smiled and said he didn't plan to do anything. Even with the 4th Guard Unit captain's shift over, Eren enjoyed educating people in his spare time. Now, he was already tired and could finally rest on a clean and soft bed. However, he couldn't sleep unguarded. He always liked to stay prepared. When he slept, a recurring dream visited him. He heard people asking if he didn't know his own name. This happened amid flames, and a red-haired woman begged him to run and not look back. Calling him, she said he should live in fear. He woke up trying to protect himself, but after drawing his sword and realizing he was only sleeping there, alone, he calmed down. Even if tears came to his face, he had to endure. Sometimes, he would skip sleeping, wake up early, and go train with his sword to lift his spirits. It had already been 6 years since he entered that world. How much longer could he maintain that daily routine? He trained with his plain sword, and his actions were noticed by another person. She complimented him, saying she didn't know such a skilled man existed on the edge of Kasurdik. Clapping her hands, she said she was impressed, but Eren remained silent. He simply noticed that she wore armor with the Fenner family symbol, and carried a spiral blade. He thought she might be a knight, but he couldn't determine her intentions. Knights were individuals part of a group dedicated to controlling aura and fighting demons. All of them surpassed human limits, wielding swords in defense of humanity, beings entrusted with this noble mission. Looking at the young man, she wondered if he was from the Fenner family. If he was, then he would be a knight of the Bolt Order. What she conveyed was what anyone could expect. Whoever was with him might have been sent by the Empire. However, noticing the indifference, the young man assured him not to worry, remaining merely enthusiastic. After observing his sword skills, she asked if he was a knight of the Order of Knights. While they were talking, a golden-haired woman appeared and asked if this was the place where he was. She questioned how the escort could have left her behind. She was the only daughter of the Vivian Fulput's family. Feeling embarrassed upon realizing she was interrupting the conversation between the two knights, the captain bowed and introduced himself as a member of the 4th Guard Unit of Fortress Eren. He greeted the young lady of Kasurdik, Miss Vivian, recognizing her from a previous encounter. The young lady said it was a pleasure to meet Captain Eren, as she had heard much about him. He wondered why Lady Vivian was being escorted by a bold knight. Lady Vivian then said she would continue her journey, noting that Sir Ben seemed to be in the way. She also told Captain Eren to keep working hard for the fortress's security. To the knight, it wasn't clear if that man was really a member of the guard. It was strange because he was sure he was a knight, just like himself, but he continued on his way, while Eren remained silent, watching the two leave, standing guard as a sign of respect for the lady. He felt something suspicious, but decided it wasn't his business, and it would be better to return to work. His name was then shouted by the fortress commander. Manhwa called him urgently. He thought something had happened, and in a very beautiful place under the blue sky, he needed to resolve the matters. That's why he stood at the door of someone who was shouting a lot. The commander had already told him not to go around picking fights, and if he were to get involved, he should assess his adversaries, as he had already defeated the mercenaries. On that occasion, he would have to resolve the situation alone, which is why he didn't believe those bullies were mercenaries. Moreover, the officer in charge, at whose door he knocked excitedly, was already tired of his presence. She asked if he was indeed the captain of the guard, the one who caused trouble all the time. She thought that if he found the job so bad, he could simply resign, and stop causing problems for so many people, as she herself, the administrative officer of the castle, Miss Nova, was already exhausted. He looked at her as if he had a plan. He had listened to the advice of the special instructor, and the only bachelor of the 4th unit, Kale. He knew that, first, he should put on the best smile and doing so, called her name. She stopped talking and looked at him with an unfriendly expression. Secondly, his friend had told him to compliment the woman, highlighting her sweetness and advantages. So, he praised her voluminous hair. She seemed like a perfectly ripe orange, and he wanted to taste her immediately. She looked at him, frozen, just thinking he had completely lost his mind. However, she wouldn't get involved in his madness, as she had many other tasks to complete, given that he only brought her headaches. She told him that the local mercenaries he had defeated the day before should be sent to Bold. Tired of his excuses, she told him to shut up, as she didn't want to hear anything else he had to say. She told him that, since he was involved anyway, he would take the place of those mercenaries. She said she would arrange compensation, and he would clean up all the mess he had caused. Despite wanting to know what was happening, he had to accompany the carriage escort. It departed, surrounded by other people, all of whom seemed to be mercenaries as well. It looked like they were preparing for a major battle or something similar. He had a bad feeling about all of it. Looking to the side, he asked who would be riding in the carriage. That was when he noticed it was the redhead from the previous day, whom he called Weasel. Upon seeing him, the redhead was startled. He said that, since he called him Weasel, he must be the educator from the day before, and that he seemed stronger now. However, Aaron had heard that all of the redhead's friends were still quite injured. He concluded that the redhead had been educated, a little less than the others, though the young man showed respect. As the sun was nearly setting, they were informed that they would stop in a small, nearby village. The captain imagined it might be the village he used to visit previously, but the place seemed abandoned, and rumors indicated that the entire village was completely empty. It appeared everyone had left together. Even though they thought that year's harvest had been good, they suspected it might have been the work of a demon, or something similar. The redhead, after hearing all about the demon, noticed that the captain was no longer around. Calling him Big Brother, he started following him, determined to go wherever he went. Passing near the carriage where the lady was, he followed the captain. The place was quite eerie. The redhead asked the captain to wait and inquired if something had happened in that village. He also wanted to know where the people were, but the captain could only remember the past, the times he had been there before. He recalled a child he had met when visiting the village, but the redhead found it strange when he stepped on something. When he asked the captain what it was, the captain, calling him Weasel, told him to look up. Upon doing so, he noticed there were some people hanging from crosses, and the atmosphere was deeply unsettling. The sight disoriented the mercenary. It was too much for his eyes to bear. Still recovering from it all, when the guard captain Aaron was called, he turned and saw it was the lady addressing him. She asked what he was doing there, and he, in turn, wanted to know what she was doing in a place like that. Despite the unfavorable setting, the lady didn't seem bothered by anything around her. Even in a village filled with the scent of death and such a grim atmosphere, people lined up to eat soup bubbling in a cauldron, served kindly by the service staff. The captain and young Dylan sat near a campfire, watching the people line up to eat. Aaron couldn't believe those people were so relaxed they could eat after seeing all that. He wondered what kind of twisted, evil person would do something like that to an entire village. An old man walking in that direction said it was a sacrifice that someone had performed. It was a kind of ritual where humans were offered to demons. The old man noticed that neither of them had eaten yet, and asked if they would like a sip of wine. The captain declined, saying alcohol dulled his senses, but Dylan accepted. Aaron warned him that if he vomited again, he would be educated. The old man was John, the caravan commander. He said he had never seen their faces before and asked if they were really mercenaries. The captain introduced himself, saying his name was Aaron and that he was a temporary mercenary. Then John told them to eat and rest because the journey would be long. Upon seeing the lady, her knight, 2 maids, and a guard, they mentioned she was called the Flower of the East. Dylan said he had also seen her earlier, and John remarked that he felt this was not an ordinary mission. However, he hadn't expected the Lady of Casertic to be with her knight in the carriage. saying this made the captain recall seeing Lady Vivian and why she was there. When asked, she simply said she was having a drink and smiled, saying staying at the castle was suffocating. She mentioned she was heading to Bope Fortress at her father's suggestion, and she spoke about the Lord. While she was talking with the captain, her knight approached and told her it was enough. Looking at the captain, he said it would not be appropriate to know more in that position and called him the captain of the guard. There, in front of the bonfire, he wondered why the Lord had sent the lady to Fortress Bolt. Mr. John found the captain strangely calm. A demon could appear, and it wouldn't faze him. All he said was that they had a knight on their side, and knights were trained to fight demons. They were the elite force of the Empire, and Aaron stated that as long as he had his sword, even the smallest chance of survival, it was still a chance to come out alive. I looked in the direction the lady had gone, and thought it was a shame. John, the leader of the caravan, also thought so and wished everyone luck. And so the three of them remained in turmoil by the fire, and he remembered when he gifted a book, and how happy the little boy who received it was. This happened during one of his visits to that village. The book brought back good memories. The boy's name was Horn, and he recalled thinking he had grown. While he was lost in thought, something touched his shoulder, and his first reaction was to neutralize it. Only afterward did he look at what it was. It appeared to be a zombie or something similar, seemingly a terrifying being. It had typical zombie features. Sparse hair and a characteristic ghastly appearance. The creature growled loudly, trying to intimidate the captain, who, as long as he had his sword, would defend himself. He struck the being, sending it flying. After observing its appearance, he was certain it was a zombie. However, he heard more of those sounds, more growls, and more of them appeared, and the young Dylan was under attack. But Dylan was defending himself. It was another zombie. The sight left the boy terrified. Despite being a mercenary and causing trouble at inns where he stayed, he was also a cowardly young man. After being saved by the captain, he asked where he had gone at that moment and why he had left him behind. Clinging to the captain's legs, Dylan shouted that they were completely doomed. He explained that the mercenaries and soldiers were in a deep sleep and couldn't wake up. It seemed like they had fallen under some kind of sleep magic, but it didn't make sense for it to be magic, because he and the weasel, as he called young Dylan, were both fine. This led him to reflect that it was only the two of them who hadn't eaten the damn soup. It wasn't poison but a sedative. He figured someone must have been behind it, and as he concluded his thoughts, the young man called his attention, saying they were in trouble and surrounded by zombies. With their terrifying appearances typical of zombies, their hunger and thirst for humans were also evident. Aaron told him to leave and said he would warm himself up a bit with those slow zombies before the real game began. As he knew this was just the beginning, he started slicing through some of them, and more of them appeared, swarming like rats or any other pest. But all of that woke someone up. It was something called the awakening of the army. Something or someone had awakened all those zombies. But this wasn't a problem for that experienced captain. All that trouble was quickly resolved. However, it started raining, and yet one remained, and he noticed it in the rain. When he saw who it was, even with the zombie growling, he recognized him. It was the young boy from that small village to whom the captain had brought books, and, as expected, he had grown a bit. When he saw Horn, he even tried to raise his sword against him, though deeply shaken by his presence. 2 years ago, the captain had hidden in a village, far from his pursuers. It was there that he met that child, who admired him for being a knight and loved calling him Sir Knight. The captain showed the boy a book that featured knights, and in that book, they were strong and cool. Horn was a farmer's son. That boy loved books, and showing him one of his books, he said the captain was the coolest person he had ever seen. In this way, the boy Horn earned a special place in the captain's heart. The captain, who became his reading companion, grew to love hearing the boy's stories. However, now, under the rain, he was faced with that zombified boy. The sight that once filled his eyes with joy now brought pain to his heart. Even after staying in Casertic Fortress, he kept visiting the village to see him. He told him about a library full of books in the city while splitting firewood, and the boy watched. He explained that the librarians were buried in books all day, and he could read them whenever he wanted. The boy decided that this was what he wanted to be when he grew up, a librarian. Aaron thought that for him, as a bookworm, it would be easy, almost a perfect opportunity. Some might say that demons fed on human fear. Every time he raised his sword to finish off that zombie, memories of the boy from the village came to him. He remembered a day when he saw Horn with a face full of bruises, saying he had been educated by his father. This happened when the boy shared his dream of becoming a librarian. However, his father told him that a farmer's son could only be a farmer, and the boy tearfully recounted this to the captain. Aaron told young Horn that it wasn't true, that he could be whatever he wanted to be. Demons fed on human despair, and he couldn't give in to despair at that moment. He put his sword aside and ran to his old friend. kneeling to his level and embracing him in his arms. While it rained, he held the zombified boy, who only growled and tried to bite him. As he did so, he told the boy that he wasn't a knight but merely the captain of the guard at a fortress. Meanwhile, his companion ran through the rain, shouting at him and saying he had woken everyone who was asleep, leading everyone to eliminate the zombies. They all wielded their weapons. The red-haired boy encouraged everyone to use their swords and axes to overpower the zombies. Meanwhile, Eren laid his zombified old friend's body on the ground and asked Horn to rest. Under the rain, kneeling beside the boy's body, he covered his eyes with his hands to let him depart in peace. He deeply hoped that nothing bad awaited after death, and that only a peaceful place would greet them. An explosion came from the house where the young lady was. He grabbed his sword, saying he would avenge Horn for his dear friend Horn. As he said this, he walked toward the chaos of people and zombies. This was his path to where the lady and her knight were. However, inside the house, many things were happening. Among them, the lady's maids were fatally injured and lay on the ground. Due to rumors that someone desired the young lady in Casertic Fortress, they were heading to Bolt. The scene was tragic. The knight had been wounded in the arm, and the maids and the guard had also succumbed. The knight confirmed that the rumor was true, saying he never expected anyone to target such a secret procession. As he spoke, the lady seemed asleep, and the setting resembled a bedroom. The knight said that wielding a sword to protect the lady was the happiness and romance of a knight. Even if his opponent was a demon, it wouldn't diminish its significance or greatness. Therefore, he asked the foul and demonic being to step aside. The demon called him talkative. The demon said that no matter how much time he tried to buy with such nonsense, his wounds wouldn't heal easily. He reminded the knight that he had been struck by a dagger coated in a certain poison and had likely eaten the stew. And thanks to the poison's effects, his mind must now be a mess, believing he had a chance to defeat him. Confident in his victory, the knight said the demon's actions weren't just disgusting to him. Perhaps it was because of his hideous appearance. The demon, enraged, ordered the knight to be more careful with his words when addressing him. He declared he wasn't dealing with any ordinary demon but rather an ancient and powerful one. The demon was at about half the knight's total skill level, and his aura, the demon's seat, was visible. Additionally, the demon had transformed one of his arms to be more demonic. Warning of this fact, he said he would cut the parts that hadn't yet transformed as soon as the knight fell for his provocations. The demon glared furiously at the knight, clearly irritated by the offensive words. Knight Ben had no intention of giving up, believing he still had a chance to win. He thrust his sword through the demon, attempting to cut off the arm that had been modified through demonization. However, the demon, more cunning, grabbed Knight Ben by the neck, seemingly intent on squeezing it further. He told the knight that he thought he might end it if he hit an untransformed part of his body. Seeing the knight's eyes, the demon understood this was his real intention, but believing he could defeat a mere knight like him was sheer arrogance. Squeezing Knight Ben's neck further, to the point of making a sound, the demon said he would finish him off. However, at that moment, someone's words reignited Ben's confidence, giving him hope for survival. Eren arrived, seeking vengeance for what had happened to the boy Horn. He held his sword, already preparing to strike the demonic being. Showing no mercy, he delivered the blow and told the demon to accept it like a man. Knight Ben had a clear view of what was happening and noticed when the captain arrived at the scene. He saw Eren seeking vengeance for someone named Horn and witnessed the captain's blades strike the demon. Moreover, he observed the expression on the captain's face as he told the demon to accept it like a man. The demonic being roared after being struck by the captain's sword. The demon then released the knight, freeing its hand to strike the captain. After hitting Eren and throwing him aside, the demon tried to regenerate from the blow it had suffered. Its regeneration was quick but left it irritated, as the captain had removed parts of its head. Even so, the damaged part of its head was almost fully healed, though the demon was furious that this man wasn't even a knight. During the regeneration, the demon consumed precious life elixir. Before finishing, it needed to grab that woman quickly, referring to Lady Vivian. Eren stood again and confronted the demon, angry that it had turned his young friend into a zombie. The captain, once again poised to strike, said it was all because of what the demon had done to Horn. He attacked with great force and vigor, enough to land another blow and subdue the demon. After several strikes, Eren was still not satisfied. His revenge was far from complete. He told the demon to recover quickly, because every time the demon healed, Eren would cut it down again, willing to repeat this countless times. The demonic being, with an arm full of eyes, called Captain Eren a damned fly. The person hosting the demon spirit began to panic, as the demon's life elixir was no longer enough. The host was now draining his own veins to sustain the demon. At this rate, he would be completely consumed. Eren, seeing the host despair, remarked that he thought the host was strong enough to withstand more than 1 or 2 blows. However, he proved weak and, even so, deserved to suffer for what he did to Little Horn. Certainly, Eren would strike the demon again and again until he was exhausted. This time, though, the demon managed to grip the sword. To lessen the impact and damage, it thought this man was insane and had no idea who this horn was. Yet, this man wasn't even a knight. Where did he get the strength to hurt it like this? The captain held firm, refusing to let go of the sword. The demon also didn't want to release it but had to pull the sword away to block a sneaky strike prepared by Mr. John. John, with a changed appearance, remarked that the captain wasn't just big but likely strong enough to help the demon. Captain Eren asked when John would be dragged out of the fight. John thought his sword was sharp enough, so large it resembled a bear devouring everything. But there was something he couldn't understand. On the outside, he seemed like a bear, but inside, he was nothing more than a cunning fox. He wanted to know how the villagers had been sacrificed, arriving at just the right moment. He couldn't help but suspect John was responsible. He continued to say that if not for Captain Eren, he would have already ended everything there. The monstrous demon simply observed the fight between Eren and John as it recovered. Meanwhile, the host tried to communicate with the demon inside his body, begging it to recover on his behalf. However, the demonic entity said it was too late and declared the host's body no longer necessary. The man, desperate, pleaded with the demon not to abandon him, offering more life elixir. But the demon no longer wanted that body as a host. It had found a more appealing vessel. During the fight with John, Captain Eren's sword broke, having been weakened from the battle against the demon. John asked if it was over, declaring it was the end for the captain. However, Eren wanted to show his true counterattack and struck John with the hilt of his sword. John fell prostrate immediately, as a man like Eren wasn't part of John's plans. The situation worsened, and Eren realized that, in the end, the host was completely consumed by the demon. Now only two remained face to face, the demon in its original form, searching for a new host, and Eren, seeking vengeance. The demon ordered the inferior creature to answer something and revealed that the great being would guard it from that moment forward. It asked what Eren would do now, as he didn't even have the strength to swing his sword, not being a knight at all. Hearing this, Eren lunged at the demon, who was still speaking, saying he was weak and probably wouldn't accomplish anything. Eren retorted that the demon's eyes were large and repugnant. Opening his mouth, the captain said he still had the strength to tear him apart, and then he bit him. It was so intense that the demon felt discomfort as Eren continued to bite. Suddenly, something surprising happened. Something truly incredible was taking place. Eren's vision began to blur, and gradually, he saw two people fighting. A commotion erupted around him, with voices arguing over games and money. Gladiator Gal Guy and the Gambler Way. Also present was the beautiful mage Avery and comrades from his mercenary days. It was strange being there again. It felt like he had returned to earlier times. Then someone placed a hand on his shoulder. When he looked, he recognized the person calling him Commander, but he could no longer see their face clearly. Gradually, the person appeared, their body riddled with arrows and still pierced by swords lodged in their flesh. The memory insisted on lingering, and he couldn't forget it. However, this person had to survive. A sorrowful memory emerged in his mind. He was alone, sitting, while all his friends lay on the ground, their faces unrecognizable. Now, with the vision of the demon chained to him, the captain heard it say he was, indeed, delicious. Yet, the chains began to break. In the battle against the pink-eyed demon, Eren managed to break the chains and free himself. But he couldn't forget his subordinate, or the voice telling him he had to survive at all costs. That's when he woke up, still groggy, and heard Knight Ben asking if he was okay, as he had finally awakened. Ben was relieved because Captain Eren had regained consciousness and seemed fine. Eren was also glad the knight was still alive. Ben remarked that Eren should be the one saying such things, as he thought he had already died. At a certain point, he had lost hope, growing weaker and weaker, though Eren found it odd, as his body felt fine. The knight explained that he had found Eren unconscious when he woke up, though the captain didn't know what had happened since he had only just regained his real memories. Ben regarded him with a mixture of confusion and concern over what had happened with the demon, and told the captain that, regardless, the demon was in that state. He had found him alongside the demon, which was now completely shriveled, with not a drop of life's elixir left in its veins. Ben asked if this was Eren's doing, though Eren, having been unconscious, couldn't remember what had happened. The captain apologized, admitting that his thoughts were still muddled and that he couldn't recall anything. He reasoned that since the demon was already defeated, the method didn't matter much, but something still bothered him. He didn't understand what the young lady had done so recklessly to provoke the demons, especially since she seemed unaware her life had hung by a thread. Ben gently reminded him that such matters weren't appropriate to discuss with a noble and that the details couldn't be revealed to him. Nevertheless, he said they owed Eren a huge debt and wanted to formally introduce himself. Extending his injured arm for a handshake, Ben said he was a knight of Bolt Fortress and sincerely thanked Captain Eren. Aaron merely said it was no problem. After that, they began gathering the zombified bodies. They created a massive pile and started the cremation. The remaining members of the mercenary caravan stood nearby. Aaron reflected on how they had sacrificed the entire village to summon a demon, all because they wanted Lady Kasurdic's life. At the top of the pile was Horn, being cremated alongside the nightly adventure book he loved so much. The rising smoke carried an unpleasant odor, but Aaron stayed close. After everyone had been cremated, the caravan turned back toward Kasurdik. They all agreed to say it was Nightben who had dealt with the demon. Since only the two of them knew what had really happened, Aaron thought it was more convenient this way. If more people knew, they might suspect he had come into contact with a demon. The story could spiral out of control, escalating to the point where the church might launch an investigation. In any case, he had survived once again, would receive compensation, and ultimately came out ahead. Lost in his thoughts, he was interrupted when the red-haired boy appeared, calling him Big Brother, and asking why he was walking so fast. Aaron thought that little weasel had been taken out, but somehow he had survived by hiding beneath the pile of bodies. Aaron realized that the demon was more persistent than he had anticipated. Even after being told to stay away, he kept pursuing Aaron, especially since Aaron continued taking on substitute mercenary missions. When Aaron returned to the inn and was resting in his room, he removed his shirt to relax, only to notice something on his chest that caught his attention. Looking in the mirror, he couldn't believe it. A pink eye had appeared on his chest. To make it worse, the eye spoke, even asking Aaron how he was doing. Aaron, shocked, screamed in fright. His immediate reaction was to grab a dagger and try to poke his chest to remove the strange eye. However, the demon didn't seem to care, finding Aaron's attempts refreshing, even suggesting he try a little higher. Being typically discreet and silent, Aaron's behavior began to irritate Henna, who wasn't used to seeing him act like that. After some time, Aaron gave up trying to remove the pink demon eye from his chest and simply lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. He asked if the demon was the same one from before, to which the demon replied that this was what ignorant people called him. Aaron thought that the cursed being must have entered his body when it bit him. Realizing this was likely the reason he had lost his memories, the demon told him not to fool himself, saying Aaron had no say in the matter, as the demon had chosen to take control of his body willingly. Aaron demanded that it leave his body and possess someone else, warning that he would rip it out and throw it away. The demon insisted, repeating that Aaron had no say in the matter, and moving to a new body would take far too long. Aaron grew curious and asked how long it would take for the demon to transfer to another body. The demon replied that it might take hundreds of years. Infuriated, Aaron grabbed the dagger and continued poking at his chest, trying to remove the demon. The demon remarked that having him around wouldn't be so bad and suggested he demonstrate his worth. The demon told Aaron that he could use its power if he wanted to and began channeling aura, leaving Aaron intrigued by how a simple demon could wield aura. Aura, a strong and sublime force, was something only knights possessed as a divine gift. The demon asked Aaron if he was impressed by the potential it displayed. However, the demon overused its power, becoming visibly exhausted. The pink demonic eye on Aaron's chest weakened and fainted. Aaron suddenly heard shouting from downstairs. It was Henna. He quickly grabbed a blanket to cover his chest and the demonic eye. Despite that, Henna continued yelling, saying someone needed to speak with him urgently. Someone from the Catholic monastery. Henna shouted loudly that the Catholic monastery of Kasurdik was looking for him. At that moment, a man rudely pushed past her, saying he knew Aaron was on the second floor and that he would go up himself. Approaching Aaron, the man said that when a noble called for him, he must go immediately, calling Aaron a damned commoner. He added that Sir Ben was looking for him, only to be met with a hearty punch to the face. Aaron asked the man if he still had that ugly face and called him Jace. Aaron told him to wait, assuring him he would be ready soon, and instructed him to wait downstairs for a moment. After getting prepared, Aaron descended at his own pace. Henna, happy to see him, asked if he was heading out. With her sweet voice, she asked him to return home early, saying she had recently learned massage techniques and would help him feel better. She joked that it would cost him 50 copper coins, but Aaron said it wasn't necessary, as he would be leaving soon. Initially nervous, Aaron reminded himself that they were the ones who had called him. This seemed like the right moment to claim his reward for defeating the demon. When the knight mentioned the glorious achievement of slaying a demon, Aaron decided to let the knight take the title. Aaron recalled telling the knight not to let things become a problem and, if he felt guilty, to simply share the reward. The knight immediately agreed, promising to split the reward if one was received and affirming that he would call Aaron if that happened. Aura, the miraculous power capable of destroying evil and imposing justice, was a gift given only to knights. Knights were handpicked and trained by the Empire to wield this sacred power. No one knew the exact methods used to train knights. This was all Aaron understood. However, something strange about demonic powers puzzled him. They seemed eerily similar to aura. Aaron asked Jace if they were still far from their destination, and Jace replied that they were almost there. On the journey, Captain Aaron kept cracking jokes and giving Jace nicknames, suggesting, "Halfie" as a good one. Then the noble asked what the meaning of that word was, and the captain responded that it meant, "half a noble," and began to laugh. This didn't please Joyce at all, as it seemed to reference his shorter stature compared to the captain's. After walking a bit further, he informed the captain that they had arrived. It was the hall of the Church of the Sun. This made the captain impatient because he had a demon inside his body and wasn't sure what might happen. Upon entering, he was warmly welcomed by Knight Ben, who was happy he had finally arrived. Ben commented on noticing how unsettled Aaron seemed when summoned so suddenly. However, the captain was actually nervous about the exorcism that might happen to him. Knight Ben asked him to address the priest of the church, Priest Brian, who greeted Captain Aaron warmly. He introduced another knight, Joanna the Inquisitor, both renowned for their deep religious faith. The captain stood, looking at the devout individuals and the priests before him. Joanna the Inquisitor's intense gaze sent chills down his spine as she stared at him intently. Suddenly, she moved as if to strike him on the forehead, but instead, she delivered a prayer by resting her fist gently against his forehead. This happened while Aaron already had his hand on the hilt of his sword, ready to counterattack. However, she simply placed her fist lightly against his forehead in a gentle and smooth motion. Seeing this, the priest remarked that Aaron was fortunate. The priest even joked that he would have liked to be in Aaron's place, as the Inquisitor extended her hand to bless him. After recovering from the scare, Aaron realized it was just a religious ritual, one he should have recognized at first glance. The demon within him whispered mentally that he shouldn't dare allow a subordinate of God to touch him. The Inquisitor explained that Sir Ben had told them everything, including how Aaron had refused credit even after defeating a demon. She added that this was a small gesture from the church, a tribute to his accomplishments. In a box lined with a red cushion was a golden brooch of the church. Captain Aaron asked if it was really okay for them to hand over such a precious item. The priest assured him it was fine to take it. He also said that all the church asked in return was for Aaron to lend his strength if the church ever found itself in great need. The captain had heard rumors that this priest was among the corrupt figures influencing Caserdic. Nonetheless, he was moved by receiving the brooch and the gold coins, to the point of exclaiming, "Long live the Church of the Sun!" The Inquisitor merely observed him with a disapproving expression. When his men saw the brooch, they thought it strange and asked what it was. Kale, noticing him wearing a ceremonial armor with an expensive brooch, asked if Aaron had done something to earn money. He also found something out about the brooch. It seemed unusual, as did the shining armor. The captain replied by asking why Kale didn't take off his floral bandana before commenting on his armor. Aaron explained that the brooch was a gift imbued with the energy of the sun god. Kale then questioned why he didn't use that money to pay the bar tab. Just then, the tavern owner, Charlotte, a very beautiful and polite woman, served him another mug of beer. Noticing one of their members missing, Brig asked if that person wouldn't show up that day. It was mentioned that he had the day off. When asked if she was interested in him, Charlotte joked that she would give him a massage that would make him feel really good. The captain wondered where Hannah got such ideas. Her ways were always peculiar. Looking at his warm mug of beer, he grew sad, missing the taste of a cold one. Charlotte noticed his sadness and asked if they had heard about a group of con artists. Apparently, they had recently appeared in the area, frequenting the Sickly Mermaid Tavern in District 5. It was said that many outsiders stayed there recently, and naturally, gambling was taking place. Dylan had even gone there and lost 5 times in a row, suspecting it was indeed a scam. The one running the scam was a little girl who had mastered dice rolling. Swirling his warm beer in the mug, the captain thought the child was bold. How daring to use such a young girl to gamble in his district. The captain of the guards at the Caserdic church wouldn't sit idly by and watch such chaos unfold. However, everyone noticed that the captain just wanted an excuse to gamble. He even invited Kale to join him. Smiling, Kale said he would eradicate those scammers, asking the captain to help him, please. Aaron arrived at the Siren's Tavern, buzzing with excitement, ready to start the games. After the commotion caused by his arrival, it was impossible not to notice him. The tavern owner, Joseph, greeted Captain Aaron, noting it had been a long time since he last saw him. Surprised, he asked what Aaron was doing there, as he had stopped gambling. Defending himself, Aaron said he would only play this one round since he had recently earned some money from his latest job. The scent of money likely came from a particular table, so Aaron approached it. He said he had heard that the person there was very skilled with dice and wanted to test their abilities. Quickly, the game began, with a few rounds ending in a tie. However, the opponent showed little interest in the game and barely expressed any emotions. To make the game more thrilling, Aaron decided to raise the stakes, betting everything he had on that round. Believing Aaron to be foolish, the opponent doubled the bet. But Aaron had intentionally let a few rounds slip, planning to take everything from the arrogant player now. The opponent, clearly lacking intelligence, kept raising the stakes gradually. Meanwhile, the opponent's accomplices, the real scammers, were pleased. As they were setting up their con, a signal was given by one of the scammers, indicating it was time to execute the trick. A mage among them began using her magic to manipulate the outcome of the dice. In her thoughts, she planned to bankrupt Aaron but apologized silently, as it wasn't her intention to be malicious. She was taken aback when Aaron suddenly asked if she was cheating and using magic. Her eyes widened, and her heart raced. She hadn't expected to be caught. The scammers, upset, asked Aaron, who was drinking and playing dice, how he could prove such accusations. However, Aaron didn't need to prove anything, as it was obvious to him how the game was being rigged. She had left a die showing a 4, ensuring that the next roll would also result in a 4, guaranteeing her victory for that round. The scammers tried to claim Aaron was lying and crazy, but when the cup was turned over, the 4 was revealed. Solid proof. Aaron explained that he had bet all his money to uncover how the scammers were manipulating the dice with magic. He asked the young mage why she was afraid to speak, noting that it wasn't uncommon for young fallen mages like her. Often, they were used to earn money through fraudulent gambling tricks. One of the scammers dismissed Aaron, saying he thought Aaron was just a loser. However, upon realizing Aaron knew their identities, the conversation turned tense. They asked if he wanted to be eliminated then and there. Aaron warned them he wouldn't gamble unless he was certain of the outcome. He made it clear that everyone knew he wouldn't act foolishly. Playing dice with that group had been fun for him. He declared he wanted one last round and placed a real gold coin from the Church of the Sun on the table. The sight of the coin, with its high value, left everyone stunned. The scammers asked what trick he was trying to pull, knowing they were a group of con artists. This confused the scammers further, making them wonder about Aaron's true intentions. Why would anyone knowingly gamble with a group of swindlers? But Aaron challenged them, asking if they were really going to back down after hearing his proposal. He furiously threw his axe onto the ground. Placing the axe on the table, Aaron said he would bet everything he had, including his hand. One of the scammers approached and warned Aaron that a single mistake would cost him his hand. The atmosphere grew heavy, as the game now risked far more than just money. Aaron told the young mage she was just a child and should be attending a magic school, not wasting her time there. He warned her that her magic wasn't strong, as she had been caught so easily and had much to learn. He suggested she might not be in school due to poverty, and could be trying to save money for her education. The girl, furious, told Aaron not to speak without thinking and not to spout nonsense without knowing her story. She then removed her hood, revealing her youthful face and violet hair. Aaron realized by her reaction that he was correct. She was indeed saving money to attend a magic school. The scammers, realizing Aaron now knew their strategies and identities, decided he needed to be eliminated. As soon as the dice revealed the result, everything would come to an end. However, Aaron, brimming with enthusiasm, asked the young mage if she knew any spells to chill beer. She was astonished by the question, as it had nothing to do with the current situation, but she said she knew a spell for that. Curious, she asked why he was asking such a question at that exact moment. With a smile, Aaron replied that it was now his turn, and then he rolled the dice. The game was simple. You just had to shake 2 dice in a cup, and the person with the highest combined number would win. This game was also known as the Warrior's Gambling Game. Before the dice fell, Aaron began to firmly educate all the cheaters, declaring that luck always sides with the winner. With a firm and hostile stance, he began to educate the swindlers one by one, ensuring they learned their lesson. To one of them, he asked if he wasn't ashamed, as a grown man, to use a girl for such a purpose. He thought that, beyond being a cheater, the man was a medieval fool who should be ashamed of even being born. Meanwhile, the others received Aaron's form of education, with screams echoing as the lesson was clearly being taken seriously. Extremely swift, he didn't let anyone leave without learning their lesson. The lesson was simple: never cheat and never exploit an innocent girl for illegal ends. He told everyone present, especially those still standing, that this life would bring them nothing good. The young girls sat in a corner, terrified by the education being meted out by this man. Up until that point, Aaron had dealt with all the cheaters using nothing but his hands. Kale, one of his subordinates, stood nearby, watching how Aaron handled the situation. He knew that whenever Aaron planned to gamble, a fight was bound to break out. However, the man Aaron was dealing with was wanted in the neighboring city. After everything was settled and the swindlers had received the punishment they deserved, Aaron went to find the girl who knew magic to chill the beer. He set out in search of her. The girl was trembling in a corner, thinking that, after dealing with the others, it was now her turn. However, Aaron approached her and told her he understood that she needed money. He offered her a deal. If she chilled his beer, he would hire her for a job. He promised her a room and clothes until she could enroll in a magic school. That was the proposal he made, extending his hand and inviting her to come with him. She immediately accepted, as she needed money to get into magic school. Back in his usual environment, Eren resumed his routine. He trained with his sword during downtime. As the magical girl was bringing him the chilled beer they had agreed on, he was pleased to see what he called his mini fridge. She brought the beer, and he took the mug, thanked her, and drank it all at once because he enjoyed it so much. Satisfied, he said this was exactly what he needed, a cold beer to start the day well. He placed a hand on her head, ruffling her hair, and thanked her. Then he asked how old she was, to which she replied, 12. He asked her why she was so small and if she hadn't grown enough yet. At that moment, Henna, the innkeeper, furiously asked if the girl was Eren's hidden daughter. Caught off guard for a moment, Eren quickly replied, asking what she was talking about, saying the girl was a magical child he had found. He explained that he had only done it because he knew Henna needed extra help, so he considered bringing the girl as an employee. The girl watched as Henna, without hesitation, embraced her, saying she was the cutest child ever, even if she were Eren's daughter. Henna said she would take good care of her and wouldn't let her suffer under the hands of cruel adults anymore, treating her like a little sister. Henna also asked the girl her name, to which she replied, Kana. Henna thought the name was beautiful. Henna then asked how many glasses of chilled beer Kana thought she could make in a day, and the girl confidently replied, about 300. Eren's daily routine as the captain of the guard followed a predictable pattern. Commander Manhwa scolded him in the morning for his recent antics. After greeting the boss, Eren would head to work. He would pass by some apple stands, taking the chance to eat a few and letting his subordinates grab some as well, but never more than 10. Afterward, he patrolled the market to maintain order within the fortress. This included checking out the stands with the freshest fruit, the ones he and his men preferred. Although some stand owners were annoyed, they understood that his presence kept criminals away from the market. Finally, he would monitor smuggling activities and also collect contributions. And now his subordinates, in addition to apples, also had some silver and gold coins. He conducted an extreme check for a clear investigation and wondered why there were no visitors on those days. Whenever he entered, there was a password that changed constantly, and when visiting his old friends, he had to ensure order. One of those friends mentioned that it seemed like many foreigners had recently entered Caserdic, and there was a large number of them who wanted to become merchants, but they were acting very suspiciously. Handing a piece of paper to the captain, the friend asked him to take a look. It had been 10 days since they entered the fortress. The paper said that King of the Hammer was better than Eren, but Eren, impatient, crumpled it up and threw it away before finishing. His partner was upset and tried to retrieve the paper, as it was a letter from the King of Shadows. The captain instructed him to let them know he had no time for those childish games. He thought that the increasing number of foreigners in such a remote and irregular place could only be good for the economy. However, spying a cart in the distance, he asked the guard Carter to wake up, suspecting something was wrong with the carriage. He asked the carriage owner where he was headed, and a polite old man began talking with him. Eren sensed a very suspicious vibe, considering whether he should arrest the man. The guard seemed to know him well enough to ask why he was there again. It was clear that his presence there was frequent. He introduced himself to the man and mentioned he was the captain of the guard. The man showed him coins. The man praised Eren's attire, saying he looked so elegant he could be mistaken for a knight. Handing over the coins, he said it was for Eren's hard work and called him brother. Seeing all those coins, Eren didn't mind being called that. The guard then asked if the merchant had the same thing he'd given last time. The merchant handed him a vial containing some purple pills. Everyone was very satisfied with the bribes they received. However, the captain insisted that, regardless, they needed to check everything that entered the fortress. He asked the merchant if he had anything suspicious with him. The merchant smiled and replied, "Of course not." Grinning, the merchant said that if he had anything like that, he would have paid a higher entry fee. The captain noticed the merchant had a tattoo on his neck and seemed extremely nervous. The guard, pinching his nose, was startled by what was in the carriage. He quickly called the captain to come and look. Upon opening it, they found some slaughtered animals already in a state of decomposition. Besides the stench of rot, there were worms crawling everywhere. The captain asked what the merchant planned to do with all that, but the man just stared back at him. The captain thought the situation was undeniably suspicious. The merchant, realizing he needed to provide more incentive, handed out additional bribes. Once the bribes were distributed, the carriage full of rotting meat was granted free passage. As the cart entered Caserdic Fortress, the driver thought everyone there was incredibly foolish. He mused that he would turn that place into something so terrible that hell would seem like a pleasant place by comparison. The captain asked the guard if the merchant's name was Dorno, suspecting the man enjoyed high places. This reminded him of the letter mentioning the influx of foreigners recently entering the fortress. Smiling, the captain thought the foreigner who had just entered the fortress should tread carefully around him. In that medieval era, there were only two paths for a person. They were either innocent or hanged. At the Smiling Rabbit Inn, The trio commented on how Charlotte had invited them to an outing. Brig excitedly shared that she had invited him to attend an execution together. The captain thought Charlotte was really tough as nails. However, he found the location of the outing strange, wondering if an execution was some sort of cultural festival, or something like that. No one enjoyed crowds, lines, or rude people. That's what festivals were like. Still, the young man planned to give Charlotte some bread his mother made. His companions couldn't understand how he thought giving her his mother's bread was a good idea. The bread was extravagant, with an unusual mix of ingredients, including fish. Just thinking about it made them feel ill. One of them even fell off his chair, gagging. Brig, upset, asked why they were bad-mouthing the fish bread his mother made. They learned the bread was famous in the kingdom of Brighton, his mother's homeland. The captain joked that no one in that kingdom had a sense of smell or taste. Brig thought the captain was being very mean, especially after Verman started retching just from remembering the bread. Aaron asked if he was feeling better, and then one of his informant friends arrived, saying, "Cornelia's flowers never wilt." He was immediately punched in the face, which seemed to be a signal among friends. It was then reported that Scar appeared to be looking for him, so he dragged his friend along and said to Brig, who was with Vernon, wishing him all the best and telling him to enjoy his meeting. In return, Aaron was told to come back safely. Still dragging his friend, Aaron passed through an alley and arrived at a place where he was warmly welcomed by someone waiting for him. The man with the axe asked if Aaron still remembered the oath. This was Scar, proclaimed King of the Shadows. However, Captain Aaron didn't seem to be in the mood for that kind of joke. He asked what Scar wanted, accusing him of bothering people while they were eating. He also asked what those jackets were about, wondering if they were from a school team, and demanded they return the hat. Angry, Aaron questioned why they hadn't taken it off yet, though no one understood what he meant by school jackets. Scar reminded him that they were in older times, where such things didn't exist. Aaron clarified that he had no interest in participating in the city vigilante nonsense. He asked Scar to wait and explained the recent letter, detailing the strange arrival of foreigners into the fortress. Aaron explained that all of them had been meeting every night, away from prying eyes. For this reason, Scar believed something was going to happen soon and advised Aaron to be cautious if anything occurred. The captain of the guard warned him to stay out of it, as the fortress guards would handle the matter. Aaron then asked Scar if he had visited the carpentry shop recently, as his father, Jackson, had been looking for him. Scar seemed concerned about his father, and told the captain he would meet him another time. Aaron now understood that something was indeed going to happen soon, and knew he needed to figure it out quickly. However, he resolved to act cautiously, as he didn't yet know what it was, and caution was never a bad thing. With some free time, Aaron knocked on the door of Executor Dallas, who was with his son Ted. He was warmly welcomed, as both Dallas and Ted appreciated Aaron's presence. Ted, in particular, loved Aaron's visits and always said his armor looked 1,000 times cooler than before. The captain had brought apples for Ted, who was very pleased, and Dallas asked Ted to say thank you. Aaron had always found the environment threatening, but it felt even more so lately. Dallas apologized for summoning him once again and asked him to sit down. Smiling, Aaron said it was no trouble. Dallas explained that those involved were members of the Lone Wolf team from Karzan, which Aaron found quite impressive. While observing Ted, Aaron noticed how much the boy had grown, watching as he enjoyed the apples. The captain also handed over some gold coins, which Dallas had requested as an advance payment. Dallas mentioned that the Lord was also making plans and had requested Aaron's best skills for the task. However, Ted was now of the age where the son of a farmer became a farmer, and in this case, the son of an executor was expected to become an executor. That's how things were supposed to be. Passing on such a job, despised by many, always weighed heavily on Dallas's heart. It was why his wife had left him. After slicing the apples, Ted asked if anyone would want them. Aaron waved and said he wouldn't for now. Continuing their conversation, Dallas told Aaron he was always grateful to him. Unlike the rest of the world, Aaron treated them kindly. Aaron replied, asking why he wouldn't, except, of course, for that damn underwear thief. Dallas was the only person Aaron could have a proper conversation with. Aaron also appreciated hearing news about Hans, reflecting on how that once sincere boy had suddenly become a criminal. He remarked that anyone could commit a sin, and if he himself ever became a criminal in the future, he hoped Dallas would cut off his head cleanly. Dallas replied that he would use his ultimate skill on him if that time came. He then requested Aaron stay on topic and promised that if Aaron ever committed a crime, he would slit his throat. Dallas mentioned that arrangements would be made for that day of execution. Meanwhile, in a dark alley, some people were complaining about how difficult it was to conduct secret activities because of a certain man. This man was constantly monitoring the area. It wasn't just that. Recently, outside the fortress, the attack by Kyuden had been a failure. leaving them unsure if they should make their next move. An execution was set to take place in the town square in a few days. They would use that opportunity to win the heart of Miss Caserdic. Everyone agreed with Lord Dorno as they observed a man who seemed to be sleeping, though he could also have been dead. It was the same gate guard who was always sleepy, constantly napping, and always wanting just a little more sleep. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.